Now, Francis, the president has emphasized a lot on delivery for the ministers. But what exactly are the specific performance metrics or criteria that the president has outlined for the ministers, and how exactly will these performances be objectively assessed to determine whether or not they're meeting the expectations of their roles?
Well, I mean, you just took that off my lips, because that's the same question I was going to ask. If the president was reading the Riot Act and insisting that the ministers must perform, the Nigerian people have a right to know the yardstick for their performance. We need to know. It's not just between them and the president, but it's between them. It should be a social contract between the ministers, the president, and the Nigerian people. So you cannot be talking about yardstick without the Nigerian people knowing the full details of how you intend to, judge them, how you intend to assess them. We need to know. So Mr. President needs to tell us more. He needs to tell the Nigerian people, these are the yardstick, or these are the parameters with which I want to assess my ministers. But then it's a good thing for the president to say he wants to assess them, and those who have not performed will be let go, and those who have performed will continue. But we've known that all over, in recent times, even the former administration, the same, the president said the same thing, but nothing happened. Even when the people were agitating that some ministers should go, and nothing really happened. So it's not just for Mr. President to be the one to assess them. It is the Nigerian people, because at the end of the day, it is the service they are rendering to the Nigerian people that will determine whether they have performed or not.
All right, Mr. Chilaka, I mean, just like you have rightly said, the people deserve to know what the criteria are for asking the ministers to deliver. But then asking them to deliver in itself is not so much of a tall order. But then again, looking at this directive, with the level of assertiveness that the president has spoken to the ministers, how will this directive impact the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the government's performance this time? Like you rightly said, the president before this administration, said the same thing, but nothing was done differently. And even when the ministers were asked to leave, nothing was still done. So what are the challenges and the opportunities that can come from holding the ministers accountable in this manner that the current president has done?
Well, I listened to that speech, and I heard the minister saying he wants to fight corruption, which is the pain of Nigerian problem. But he has not told us how he wants to fight corruption. You can't be saying you want to fight corruption when you are allocating so much money for vehicles, for yourself, for your ministers, for your wife. When the Nigerian people are suffering, when the Nigerian people cannot even have 3 square meals a day. You cannot be talking about performance when what you are allocating to infrastructure is less than 10–15% of the total, budget we're talking about. So, this whole thing is one thing for Mr. President to say something. On the other hand, it's another thing for us, the people, to understand what he's saying. If you take time to review the supplementary budget, you'll be shocked at the way funds have been allocated. And I keep asking myself, you want to feed children in school children. How many children were fed by the last administration? You're talking about cash transfer. Is this the only thing that this government can think about? How do you want to be able to, assess a governor, or a minister who goes about dashing money that you're borrowing to the people? So these are, like I keep saying, it's one thing for Mr. President to say this is what he wants, but he has to get to that point where he needs to ask himself, what do the Nigerian people want? The Nigerian people elected us. They elected me as their president, and I have appointed ministers on behalf of the Nigerian people. What do the Nigerian people want? It is when you get the fact of what Nigerian people want, and then you begin to use that as a yardstick to know whether the ministers are delivering or not. Other than that, we're still going to go round and round and round in circles without getting any good results.
I like that you did mention the question, what do the Nigerian people want? Because that indeed is the most crucial question. But then again, Mr. Chilaka, what exactly, in your own opinion, are the possible political implications that this could have, this particular move, on the relationships between the ministers, between the president and other political stakeholders within Nigeria, especially in the context of political reshuffles or changes in the cabinet?
I don't see anything, special about it. I just believe that, Yeah, if this government, I keep saying it, if this government is sincere with the Nigerian people, if this government is talking about restructuring the system, we cannot have over-bloated governing system. We should be able to cut costs. Right now, Nigeria is going through a lot. Nigerian people are going through a lot. So having too many ministers, too many SAs, it's not what we need now. The president himself should start from himself. He should become more accountable to the Nigerian people. He should become more, how do I put it? He should be the one to lead, by saying, okay, I'm going to cut down the ministers, I'm going to cut down the ministries, I'm going to cut down our salaries, I'm going to cut down our expenditures, because you're asking the Nigerian people to make sacrifices. Start from themselves. When Mr. President starts from that point of view, then, people will understand that, oh, there's going to be a change, in terms of how governance is run, in terms of structure and all of that. But no, I mean, you have a minister who is riding a car of 320 million naira, and Nigerians don't have good roads. Hospitals are unaffordable to the ordinary Nigerians. Employment is not there. The dollar is, running helter-skelter. So these are things that the president should be able to, look at and say, okay, good. Instead of us spending 1.5 billion or so buying cars for, the office of the president, wife of the president, let us reduce it. Do we need these cars? Is this what we need right now? It's a matter of asking questions, questions that really touch the heart. Governance is about providing for the ordinary people. And until you provide for the ordinary people, until you create an enabling environment for the ordinary Nigerians to survive, whatever yardstick you're using to judge your ministers is effort in futility.
Now, still staying on the issue of practicality, because I like that you talked about asking the major questions that actually matter. Now, there is a level of complexity in the social-political landscape in Nigeria, which we all know. So how exactly can the president, Tinubu, now ensure that this directive goes beyond just, giving it with assertiveness and authority, but then making sure that it's carried out fairly and without bias? And what are the mechanisms that can be put in place to prevent it from being used, especially for political vendettas, looking at the track record of Nigeria?
You cannot throw that away. Political vendetta can never be thrown away. So long as there's godfatherism, you see it playing out in the River State already. So long as, we have professional politicians. And so long as the process that brings people into power is still the same. A lot of these things need to change. For me, for us to have a workable system, we need to have a system that is devoid of who Mr. President is. We need to have an EFCC that is going after, people who have embezzled money, who have stolen money, without, looking at the side of Mr. President. People need to be brought to book. We keep talking about IOU theft. Who are these thefts? Why is it that they're not being persecuted? We talk of subsidy removal, which Mr. President removed. And then I remember also Mr. President said that people are benefited and are still benefiting from this subsidy. Who are they? Why are there untouchable individuals in this country? And it happens the same. It's going to play out in his ministers. Some of them are going to become super ministers. Some of them are going to become untouchable ministers. Some of them are going to do what they want to do. But like it's a simple thing. Mr. President needs to start by telling the Nigerian people, in all sincerity and in all fairness, that this and this and this are the parameters under which my ministers will be judged. If you're talking about roads, right now, all the roads in Nigeria are dilapidated. We don't even have roads. If you're going from here to Onitsha, there is no road. If you're going from here to Adamawa, there is no road. So he needs to say, okay, I'm giving my minister for works 6 months, 1 year, to get all the roads in Nigeria working, and I'm going to provide the resources in it. Then we can begin to hold him responsible if we don't get those the answers he's expecting. But you can't tell somebody you're going to, hold them responsible when there's not even money to implement any of the policies of this administration. This administration has been borrowing and continues to borrow. So how do you hold people responsible when the resources are not there?
All right, political and social commentator, Mr. Francis Chilaka, we really do appreciate your time with us on the news today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.